Okay, everyone. So um, today on this video, what we're going to look at is how do we create a basic report using Oracle Reports Builder 10G, and how do we create a master detail report using Oracle Reports Builder 10G. Okay, so the caveats of my templates video still apply. So unfortunately, there's a lot of noise going on around here. I'm doing this at home during lockdown, so just ignore any background noise you hear. Okay, so with our report. Okay, so unlike forms, we do not use Forms Builder. We're going to use Reports Builder. So you can open up Reports Builder, and when it runs for the first time, it will ask you to unblock. You can just use unblock, and it presents you with three options. Use the report wizard, build a new report manually, open an existing report. So we're going to use the report wizard. You click OK. You click next here. Welcome to the report wizard. It's just your welcome screen. Then you have three options. So you can create both the web and paper layout. You can create just a web layout, or you can create a paper layout. I'm going to create both so that we can focus on both at the moment, but we are not going to really focus on the web layout. Just the difference between the two. Paper layout report will show you what the report will look like if you had to print it or save it as a PDF. Web layout is an HTML version of the report that your user is able to view in their web browser. Okay, so I'm going to leave it on both, and we're going to click next. And we are going to create it for the moment, just a very simple list that is going to be based on the student table. So we just want to see all the students in the student table. So here we have our different options. For this video, we're going to focus on our tabular layout, which is just a simple list, as well as the group left and group above. Right. Okay, so your group left and group above is essentially a master detail report. The only difference is on a group left, the master information is on the left and the detail information is on the right. And here the master information is above the detail information. Okay, so for now we're just going to stick with a tabular layout, and I'm going to create a simple student list. So that's going to be my title for this report. So I click next. It's going to be based on a SQL query. So Reports Builder is very similar to things like VB Studio. So you do not need to use Reports Builder just for Oracle database-based systems. You could use it for a Java database. You could use it for an XML or text file-based databases. You can use it to create reports or outputs for multiple different types of systems. OLAP, so online analytical processing. So you can use it for multiple things. For us, we're just going to use it based on the Oracle database that we're using. So we're just going to use a SQL query, which should work in general for any SQL database. So I click next. Now here I can type out my query. So I could say select all from student, so our student table. Alternatively, you can use the query builder, but remember, unlike Forms Builder, we haven't connected yet to the database. So the minute I get to the screen, if I'm going directly from the welcome screen, I need to first connect to the database. Once again, we're going to connect to our local database on the virtual machine. I'm still having a few problems with this virtual machine. For some reason, it is very slow today, so we just need to give it a minute. My apologies that this is so slow. I'm not entirely sure what's happening. Okay, let's check. So you can use, you can type out the query. So here I selected all the columns from the student table. Alternatively, what you can do is you can use the query builder, which is very similar to the one in forms when you're using the LOV wizard, for example. So if I click the query builder, you'll see that my select statement has already generated this query. I could have, though, just brought this up. Let me show you. So here, if I remove this query and I go to the query builder, do you see it's empty there? So now I can select the student label and I can include it. And here, what I can do is I can simply tick which attributes I wanted to include in the select statement. Okay, so let's say I select all of them. You'll see there it generates the select statement for you. You click next. Now, very important, look at what it says. Select the fields that you would like to display in your report. You may add other fields later, and we'll talk about that just now. So here, I want to display, I can select the fields I want to display, or I can take them all to the right and display all of the fields. Let's, for example, just leave out the student class for now. Okay, so I'm displaying all the fields except the student classification. I click next. Here it asks you, do you want to calculate any fields at the moment? I'm not going to do that for now. We'll discuss that in a few minutes. So I click next. Now here you can change the label of your columns. Now remember that this is a tabular report. So everything is going to be laid out in columns. So here you can change the labels or the titles of your column. So student ID, surname, name, initial, city, state, zip, phone, birth date, pen, faculty ID, and time enrolled. Okay, so I click next. Now, there is a way to create your own templates for reports, but we're not going to do that for the moment. We're just going to use one of the predefined templates that you get in Reports Builder. And let's say we're going to stick with beige because this closely matches the color of the logo for the example company we're using, or the example institution we're using, Northwoods University, my apologies. You click next, and that's it. If I click finish, look at what happens. So here I have my actual interface for Report Builder. Okay, so let's discuss what we're seeing on screen at the moment. Okay, so this is your report editor, which is very similar to your layout editor in Forms. So what you're seeing here, this is called your paper design view, and this is effectively how your report will look if you have to print it or save it as a PDF. And you'll see that it is actually populated with data. On the left here is your object navigator. Now your object navigator in Reports Builder is a lot more complicated than Forms Builder. You will see that there is a lot of information on it. And for this module, we don't really go into detail. Even at the Oracle University, Reports Builder is its own course over Forms Builder. They don't include this as part of their Forms Builder course. So this is its own course. So for reports, we're going to touch on basic and master detail reports and parameterized reports, but that's about as far as we're going to go. Okay, now let's go back to our report editor. Let's look at the interface a little. Now you will see here there are 5 icons in this corner, right? In the top left corner of your report editor. These are your different views. By default, when you create a form, it opens in the 4th view, which is your paper design. Now, as I said, your paper design actually shows you what your form will look, your report will look like if you had to print it. Okay. Now let's go to the first one, your data model. Now you will see that your data model is actually telling you what your report is based on. Now, for example, you will see that this data model is telling me I have a query, Q1, and Q1 is generating the following output. So this query is generating these columns from the database. Okay, if you had to double click on this, you can actually see the query here, and you can actually edit the query if you want to without using the wizard. You will see as well, remember that S class is being generated by this query, even though we don't have it displayed. Okay, the query still generates it. The second tab is your web source, or the second button is your web source. Your web source shows you the HTML code of the web version of your report. But you might be saying, but Mr. da Rocha, where is the web version? We haven't seen it. That brings us here to the toolbar. Now, these are your default. Open, new, open, save, print what's on the screen, mail whatever's on the screen, connect to the database, cut, copy, paste, undo and redo, and then very important, run the web layouts of the form, of the report, sorry. And if I accidentally say form at some point and I don't correct myself, I mean report. Run the web layout or run the paper layout. If you run the paper layout, look at what happens. Do you see it just switches you to the paper design view? Because this is what your report looks like. Right. With your data. Very important. With your data. Okay. If I go to the first option there, run web layout, you will see it actually opens the web browser and displays the data in this web browser, right? With a very similar layout and template, and you will see it is an HTML file. This file is generated by the code in this source. Now, unfortunately, the HTML code, you have to, if you want to change the layout of the HTML version of this report, you have to be able to code in HTML. Unfortunately, Reports Builder does not contain what is called a WYSIWYG editor. What you see is what you get editor for the HTML portion of the reports. So, for example, if you want to change a frame, you have to go and declare the frame with your tags and set the measurements, that kind of thing. Okay, so we don't focus very heavily on the web layout. Okay, the third view is your paper layout. Now, your paper layout shows you your report without actually having the data. Let me just zoom in if okay. So now it's a little too zoomed in. Okay, but anyway, what you're seeing here is you are seeing the title, if you see here, and you're seeing the actual part of the column that is generating the data. If I had to go to the property inspector of this, you will see that it is linked to a particular database column. Do you see there? Okay, we're not going to change this. Like I said, we don't go into much detail. You'll see the source column is the SID column in the student table. Okay, so this is what you see, or this is what's populating your form with data. And this is effectively this view just without the actual data. However, you do get a few more controls here. Now, if you look here, you have your edit margin, you have confine on and off, and flex on and off. The confine just means that it needs to stay within these areas. I wouldn't recommend playing with that. That's an advanced feature. But let's talk about the margin, because if you look here at this view, do you see here, there's a logo, there's a title, and there you see the columns with the data. Here, we cannot see the logo, we cannot see the title, we just see the columns, and we would just see the area where the data is going to populate. How do I see what's happening on the rest of the page, the actual physical A4 page? Do you see this option, edit margin? If you click on it, do you see now it's actually showing the margin? And there's the logo, there's the student list title, and this thick black line, this is the margin of the page where it's able to populate data. Okay, so this, it will not insert data into these areas, and normally you set this to whatever your printer is going to be able to print. Okay, and like I said, you can actually, if you click on this margin, you're able to resize it, make the printable area bigger, etc. Okay, let's go back here. Okay, so now we have actually a very straightforward report, but we don't want this logo. So I select that logo and I just click delete. I want to import the Northwoods logo onto this. How would I do that? Very simple. You say insert and you say image. You browse to wherever you've saved your Northwoods logo. And you say OK, and there do you see the Northwoods logo is there. Now you will see that it is sort of overlapping and it's a little bit bigger. So if I go back to this view, do you see there, I can see the logo and I can see the printable area. Now what I can do is I can just reduce the size of the printable area slightly just to make things a little bit better. Now, you will see when I start moving the logo, look at what happens. Do you see that the title also moves? If I move the title here, do you see it allows me to move it there, right? But in general, look at what happens. And I'm only selecting one item. I'm not selecting both items. Okay. You will also notice one thing. If I click the picture and I start moving it left and right, do you see I can only move it left and right? Look at what happens if I try to move it up and down. Absolutely nothing. If I select the picture and I start moving it up and down, do you see I cannot move it left or right? Okay. This is called flex mode. And your flex mode here is on, right? This option here. Do you see that flex is on? This is designed so that you don't accidentally overlap things and then you somehow can't get back to them. If I switch flex mode off, look at what happens. Do you see I can move this picture how I want? Do you see I can move things over and above other items? Okay, and it doesn't wrap text. It doesn't do anything. Okay, so that's just an option to remember if you want a little bit more control. Okay, and again, that's actually the basics. I mean, here you can customize your form a little bit further just like your report, sorry, a little bit further, just like you would with your forms. So for example, here, I could make this title bigger, and you'll see it cuts it off. So you need to resize, right? I can bold it. I can change the font to something else if I wanted to. So it really just depends what you want to do. And this is true for everything that you see here. So for example, let me just zoom in a little bit more. Here, for example, I could select this column and I can center those values. I can bold those values. I can center that. I can, for example, for the pen, I can go and I can actually change the color of the text to red. So you can play around with this. It depends what you want to do. It depends on the kind of branding you want to go for, the kind of look you want to go for. So you can italicize. So you can play around with this. It's really very straightforward. Now, one of the other things that you can do to customize your form further is you can maybe insert a little bit more information. So normally on a form, or sorry, a report, normally on a report, you would typically have the page number. And a lot of businesses want to see, for example, the date and time that the report was generated. Remember, in high data turnover businesses, your reports are changing all the time. The information in those reports are changing all the time. So you want to know as management, when was the particular report that I'm seeing in front of me generated, right? So what you can do, for example, is you can insert a page number. So if I insert a page number, it asks me, where do I want to do it? So you can have top left, top center, top right, bottom left, bottom center, bottom right. So I'm going to make it, let's say, bottom left. And you can select either the page number only or the page number and total pages. So I'm going to select the page number and total pages, for example. And look at what happens. Do you see here? Let me zoom out now. You will see here, there's my report, but on the bottom left now, I have a page number. And again, this is formatable and it's also movable. So you can decide where you want this to display. So for example, I'm going to make this relatively small, bold, and italicize it, for example. Right. I can also insert the date and time. And there's a lot of different options for the date and time, right? You can also create your own custom format, so day, dash, month, something like that. Whatever you want to do, you can play around with this. Okay, but let's say I'm going to use just a basic one. Let's say May the 14th at 11:12 a.m. right? I click and I'm going to set it now to the bottom right. Look there. Okay, and this will update whenever the report gets generated, and depending on the number of pages, this automatically updates. You do not have to change this yourself at any point, right? It will be on every page. It will say the page number and the date and time it was generated. Okay, so now that I'm done with my basic report, what do I need to do to save it? Very simple. You simply click on save. You go to the area you want to save it to. Okay. And you give it a name. So my student list report. And you click on the Save As type and you save it specifically as a reports binary file, a .rdf file. Very important. You click Save, and if you navigate to wherever it is, you will see there it's saved it, an Oracle Reports module. Right. Now, very important, your wizards, much like your form wizards, your report wizards are re-entrant. In other words, let's say I wanted to add additional information to this report. Now, if you remember, I left out the student classification. So let's say I want to add the student classification column to this report. What do? Do I start from the beginning? No. If I right click somewhere and I bring up the report wizard, do you see it's the re-entrant version of this wizard? So you are able to edit your report and adjust the columns, adjust your query, etc. Now let's say here I want to, after the date of birth, I want to display the class. So I added the class there after to the date of birth, and I click finish, and lo and behold, do you see after date of birth, do you see S class? So I'm just going to change that name. So do you see I can actually change the name of the column here on the actual form report. Sorry, I don't need to use the wizard. Now, the one caveat of using the wizard is that it resets your the formatting, your template that you use. The colors and things of the text that you've changed is still there, but do you see it's moved my margin back up, and it's included the photo. So you need to just remove that. Make the printable margin back there. And there we go. That's our basic report.